Yes, you had a question there? You good? You good, Lee? Yeah. All right. Okay, so today we're going to learn how to evaluate this expression. So we're going to evaluate this particular expression if you had different numbers that you needed to plug in. Okay? Whenever you were plugging in a number in for a letter, what I would like you to do in most circumstances, some circumstances you don't have to, but most circumstances I would like you to put parentheses. All right? So for my A value, I'm going to put open parentheses. I'm going to plug in a 3/4. Okay? For my C value, that's raised to the power of 4, I'm going to open up some parentheses and put in a -2. All over. For my D value, I'm going to open up some parentheses and put a 3. Then I'm going to put my minus sign, my subtraction sign. Put my fraction bar right there. For my C value, I'm going to plug in a -2. And for my E variable, I'm going to say 1/3, but I'm going to close the parentheses and I'm going to square. All right, when I start this problem, I'm going to be thinking to myself, where do I begin? We can start at PEMDAS. We're obviously going to be working with parentheses, okay? But there's not a whole bunch to evaluate inside the parentheses until we do the exponents first. So number one, what I'd like you to do is I would like you to evaluate the exponents first. Okay? And hopefully in your journal, as we work this, I'm going to work my way down. So I'm still going to keep the 3/4 right now. Still keeping the 3/4. I'm going to evaluate this -2 to the power of 4. All right? Now, if you have an even number of negatives being multiplied, remember, a negative times a negative is a positive, okay? So we have an even number. So we know that our answer is going to be positive. So what would be -2 to the power of 4? That's a good, hey, you know what? That's okay. You're thinking 2 times 4 is 8, but think, what's 2 times 2? 4. Times 2 is 8. Times 2 more is 16. Okay, so that's the common misconception of when you're doing powers. Powers tell you how many times I'm multiplying the number to itself. Okay? So we're going to put 16 right here. But listen, that's a common misconception that you just multiply them together. So I'm glad that was brought up. So we still have a 3 in the denominator. Minus. Still going to keep the -2 where it's at for right now. But I am going to evaluate this 1/3 squared. 1/3 squared equals 1/3 times 1/3. Now, do you remember how to multiply fractions, like the process? No, it's not cross. When you multiply fractions, it's the numerator times the numerator, and the denominator times the denominator. So when we're multiplying fractions, the reason why I'm putting this up on the board, so in your journal, it reminds your brain, top times top, bottom times bottom.
So 1/9.
1/9 is correct. Okay? So whenever you're multiplying a fraction, remember, it's the numerator times the numerator and the denominator times the denominator. Okay? All right, so now we have all of our exponents evaluated. Now, Maddie, now I'm going to worry about this left side. I'm going to kind of work from left to right and worry about simplifying this. Okay? Now, we're going to do a little review here. And the review is dealing with, well, how in the world do I multiply a fraction to a whole number? So I want you to think about the number 16 a little bit differently. I want you to think of it as not just a 16, but 16 over 1. So in your journal, write it not just as a 16, but write it as 16 over 1. Okay? So right now, all I'm worrying about right now, everybody, is I'm just worried about evaluating this part of our problem. That's all I'm focusing on right now, is just this part. Now, what did I just say about fractions. Numerator times numerator, right? Denominator. So if we multiply 3 times 16, that's a little bit more difficult to do in your head. It is 48. 48 over 4. Okay? And 48 divided by 4 is 12. But there's actually a shortcut to it. So let's say you in your brain, like, I don't multiply 3 times 16 automatically and get 48. There's another way to do this. I want you guys to understand. If there's a number in the denominator that's divisible to any number in the numerator, you can do it. So check this out. 4 goes into 16 how many times? 4 times. And what's 3 times 4?
12.
So it makes it a little bit faster, okay? I know it's been a while. I remember that was one of those tricks that a teacher showed me when I was, I think, when you start doing fractions a lot in elementary and junior high. And I was like, oh, that makes it so much faster. If I can take something in the denominator and divide it into the numerator, and it also works backwards as far as if you can take the numerator and divide it into the denominator, you can also reduce it. Okay? So we have 12 now. So now what do we have? We have 12 divided by what?
3.
We have 12 divided by 3. Now, I didn't put that in parentheses anymore. And what is 12 divided by 3? 4. So now, bam. Automatically, we've gone from this right here to 4 without the use of any calculator. All right? Now, what I'd like you to do now, I'm going to go right here where there's a minus sign, so I'm just going to move down just a bit, put minus. And I'm going to bring down what we have right here. We have a negative 2 over, I'm sorry, you're sitting in a no yawning zone. Okay, so I don't want to have to ticket you. All right? So that's what we have left. So go ahead and make sure you're all at the same point. Does anybody see something they think we could probably do to make it a little bit easier? When you see a negative or a minus sign right next to another negative, you know eventually what's going to happen. Yeah, so these right here are going to cancel out, and that's going to be a plus. So what I'm going to do, you can do it in your journal, it's going to say it's going to eventually be 4 plus whatever 2 over, and I'm going to leave this one in parentheses, 1/9 is going to be 2. And so this is where students sometimes they pause, like, I'm not sure exactly what to do with that. Because then probably what would they do? I'm going to get a calculator out and type it in and press enter. Okay? What would we like the denominator to be? Not 1/9. What would be the easiest number to have in the denominator? I'll give you a hint. The easiest number, what's the very first number you start with when you learn to count?
1.
We want the denominator to equal 1. Because technically, then it's just a number, okay? So, in order to do that, what I need you guys to understand, and in your journal, this is the process by hand that you would need to do. You're going to multiply both the numerator and the denominator by what's known as its reciprocal. So I'm writing the word. So what's the reciprocal of 1 over 9?
9 over 1.
9 over 1. Okay? Now, the reason why we're using the reciprocal is we're trying to get the denominator equal to 1. Well, how does 1/9 times 9 over 1 equal 1?
Well, it equals 9 over 9.
So this right here does become 9 over 9 if you multiply the top times the top and the bottom times the bottom, which just equals 1. So we've accomplished that. So essentially this, they cancel out to a 1, and all we're left with is 2 times 9 over 1, which is
over 1.
Right. So 2 times 9 over 1, you're right, it's just 18. So essentially what we have left is just 4 plus 18, because those multiplied together are 18, and 4 plus 18 gets us to 22. All right? The reason why I wanted to do this one together is because we had to do what? We had to evaluate the exponents, And not all numbers were whole numbers or integers, they were fractions. How do you multiply fractions together? Okay? We also reviewed, hey, when you have two negatives right next to each other, what happens? Two negatives next to each other, they become positive. How do you multiply a whole number to a fraction? Multiply the top times the top and the bottom times the bottom, right? Okay? So it kind of goes over a lot. What I'd like you to do right now is I'd like you guys to attempt to do as much as you can on your own for the next 10 minutes and see how far you can get on that front page. Okay? Next 10 minutes, work on your own. You can work with somebody else as far as checking your answers, but I want you guys to do the process. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and pause this and shut this down. All right. What is our d value by itself? What's d equal to? 3? Okay. Now, I'm not going to put a parentheses because there's nothing right next to it. What's my b value equal to? -8? -8 minus. Now I'm going to open up a parentheses for my c value. What's c in this particular case? -2. And that's all over. What's my a value? 3/4. And my c value, once again, is -2. So that's everything plugged in the way it's supposed to be. All right? Here, what do you notice about what I'm going to do is I'm going to evaluate everything inside this parentheses first. So you guys know what I'm doing. The first thing I'm going to do in PEMDAS, which right is the order of operation, is I'm going to work with everything inside of these parentheses first. What do you think is going to happen to these negative signs right there? Right, so this is going to be, everybody, right here, this is going to be -8 plus 2. -8 plus 2. All right? So I'm going to go down just a little bit here. We still have a 3. What is -8 plus 2? -6. We'll put -6 right there. Now, where probably people got stuck is not in the numerator. Where did they probably get stuck? In the bottom, the denominator, right? Okay, like what the heck do I do with 3/4 times -2? Go with 18. All right, so what did I tell you guys about fractions? You multiply the top times the top and the bottom times the bottom. So 3/4 times, how could I rewrite -2 where it's an improper fraction? -2 over 1. So you can always do that. So, blue, I can also call you blue over 1. All right? How's it going there, Michael over 1? Good? Make it over 1? All right? So, anytime you can always put a number over 1, and it's still itself. Okay? Now, what would that be? Don't give me the reduced answer yet. We'll get there. -6 over 4. Now that reduces to simply -3 over 2. So right here, this eventually just becomes -3 over 2. What about the numerator right here? That's pretty easy. What's that? -18. Now blue, I've got a negative and a negative. Positive. So now I'm left with 18 over 3 over 2. Now there was an important word that I'm hoping that everybody wrote down in their journal when you're dividing something by a fraction. When you're dividing something by a fraction, what do you have to multiply that denominator by to get rid of this fraction right here in the denominator? It's reciprocal. It's reciprocal. What's the reciprocal of 3 over 2? 2 over 3. Is that correct? Well, now, see? It's the flip. All right, the reciprocal is the flip. So 2 over 3. So these cancel to 1. All right, those cancel to 1. And now all we have left, everybody, is just to do that right there. That's all we have left. All right? Sure. I like it. 18 over 1. 2 over 3. Lots of ways to do this.
36.